VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at VCYAmerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk here on the VCY America Network. My name is Jim Schneider. Our topic today is that of immigration reform. Just before we get to that, though, I would like to share with you an alert that we have received that it appears that as early as tomorrow, and if not tomorrow, for certain this week, that the full House of Representatives is going to be voting on legislation that would ban abortions nationwide at 20 weeks of pregnancy. It is H.R. 1797, the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. It's to come up on the House floor this week as early as tomorrow, prohibiting abortions after 20 weeks fetal age. There is what they say here in the lifenews.com article, unless the mother's life is endangered, based on compelling scientific evidence that by 20 weeks the unborn child is capable of experiencing excruciating pain while being aborted. So just wanted to bring to your attention that H.R. 1797 to be voted on this week, and you certainly can contact your legislators with your thoughts on that, as well as its Senate companion, S886. And the number there at Washington, D.C., 202-225-3121. That's 202-225-3121. Well, the pot on the stove has been boiling over in Congress on the topic of immigration reform. Pressure has been mounting from the White House and from a group called the Gang of Eight, who have been pushing legislation known as S-744. This past weekend, a huge mob of illegal alien supporters, including what is believed to be many illegal aliens themselves, surrounded the home of the Kansas Secretary of State to protest his, quote, staunch anti-illegal alien views. We're going to be talking about this immigration reform and the Gang of Eight with our guest today, Phyllis Schlafly. Phyllis has been a national leader of the conservative movement for decades. She's president of Eagle Forum. She's testified before more than 50 congressional and state legislative committees on constitutional, national defense, and family issues. She's the author of numerous books and articles, also named one of the 100 most important women of the 20th century by Ladies' Home Journal. And Phyllis, I think we'll carry that over to the 21st century as well. Welcome to Crosstalk.
Thanks so much, Jim. Always good to join Crosstalk.
Illegal immigration and amnesty legislation, the immigration reform topic, it's a buzz in Congress right now. You call this legislation S-744 an amnesty bill. Tell us why.
Well, it is amnesty. They're not coming in as illegal immigrants have come for decades in this country. It's to okay the millions who came illegally, swam across the river or climbed over impediments or snuck in various ways and violated our laws, used phony documents, and took jobs from Americans. And it just simply makes no sense with the high unemployment rate we have in this country to bring in people who will take American jobs and keep us from coming out of the depression that we've been in.
Tell us about this Gang of Eight, and what is their agenda in all of this?
Well, of course, we think our laws should be made by Congress, two houses, and then signed by the president. But in this case, there were 8 members of the Senate who went into a secret room and wrote this piece of legislation, 744, and that's not the way legislation ought to be written. They had no input from the public. They just had one day of hearings, which is ridiculous. It's a 1,000-page bill, and it doesn't do anything that the American people want. It is very clear that the American people want border security first, before we talk about anything else. And there's nothing in it that gives us border security. It is just plans and proposals, but no real security. And we've been down that trail before with previous legislation, and we know that we're cheated on it.
But Phyllis, we're constantly hearing those words. We need to strengthen our borders. We need to tighten our borders. You're saying that this bill does not have border security as part of it?
It has nothing but plans and proposals. it doesn't have any real security. You know, I remember seeing the photo op when President George Bush, called the press in and watched him sign what was called the Secure Fence Act. We never got it. They never built it. And then there's so many laws that this country has not carried out. For example, many of the illegals are people who come in through planes and ports of entry, have visas for a limited time, and then they're supposed to leave. There's government is supposed to have a tracking system so they make sure they leave when their time is up. That has never been implemented. And then we have another law that says that when you present yourself at the border, you're supposed to offer proof that you will never be a public charge. And they've never implemented that. And then we all know that the Boston bombers came in fraudulently in the refugee section, and then they went on welfare, and they got $100,000 worth of welfare benefits before they decided to kill people at the Boston Marathon.
Yeah, let me just capitalize on that here for a moment, Phyllis, because over the past few days, we received word that the Obama administration is now looking at bringing Syrian refugees to America. In other words, we'd be importing jihad to America through the Syrian connections.
Well, that's right, and they don't. The Boston bomber situation proves that the government is incapable of doing an adequate background check on these people because there were plenty of clues for why those Boston boys should not have been allowed in this country. And even let him go back to Russia and then come in again without investigating him. And so letting people in from Syria who are probably, I don't know who they are, but they don't sound like they're people who want to live the American lifestyle. There's people who think the way to do is to create a riot in order to get what you want.
Let's talk about Marco Rubio for a bit, because he's been a big promoter of this immigration bill. Here is from WND. Rubio stated repeatedly in recent weeks effective border security was essential to getting his vote for the final version, despite his role in drafting the original bill. But earlier in the week, he told a Univision audience in Spanish that the effort to legalize the millions of illegal immigrants in the U.S. was his top priority. He said, let's be clear, nobody's talking about preventing the legalization. The legalization is going to happen. That means the following will happen. First comes legalization, then come the measures to secure the border, and then comes the process of permanent residence. Phyllis, that order seems to be mixed up there by Senator Rubio.
Well, if you believe they'll secure the border after they legalize the illegals, I've got a fine bridge around here I would like to sell you.
Yeah.
Because we've been down that trail before. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And we don't believe them, and the American people don't believe them. And I think Marco Rubio, who was one of my favorites, I was one of the early donors to him. I held a fundraiser for him the year before when he was only 4% in the polls. And I think he's been taken for a ride by these people who are just using him as a salesman for a terrible bill that has nothing in it that we want and so many bad things. It's, there's no border security. There's no tightening up of the people staying here on overstaying visas. There's no tightening up on the way they're treated or their use of welfare. And unfortunately, it's very sad to watch him just kind of destroying himself.
Yeah, and we don't know, and no pun intended, what side of the fence he's on this issue, because there seems to be doublespeak coming from him in this regard. And one pledge, in one voice, pledging that we're going to have reform and then border security, and then in English saying, no, we're going to have border security and then bring about the immigration aspect to it.
Yes, and he's supposed to be fluent in Spanish, but sounds like he didn't think anybody would translate what he said to the Hispanics, which is very sad. And then you have to ask, where is this push coming from? And there's plenty of money behind it. You've got the Democrats who want it very badly because they know that these people who are being legalized will be voting Democratic. And then the other big push is from big business that wants the cheap labor. And here we have this high unemployment in this country, and there are two kinds of people coming in, and the ones who are the low-skilled, who maybe never even got through high school. We've got plenty of high school dropouts of our own. We don't need any more. And I noticed there was a piece in the paper yesterday about the head of one of these hamburger food chains, and he said we need them to come in. You know, does our country really need more hamburger flippers? We've got people who are low education and in poverty and who would be glad to have those jobs.
And these are usually starter jobs for teenagers as well.
Absolutely. That's the way you get your life organized, when you take a job and have to show up on time. And then it's also with the higher skilled people, because this 1,000-page bill has greatly increased the number of H-1B visas, and these visas that are supposed to be for skilled university graduates. And I get so irritated every time I hear this notion that the foreigners are the best and the brightest. I don't believe it. Most of the world's great inventions and innovation are American, and we don't need to look overseas to find, quote, the best and the brightest. And what they're doing is taking jobs away from our own college graduates. And as you know, there are so many more college graduates now who cannot find jobs.
Senator Lindsey Graham yesterday told conservatives who are trying to block the measure that they will doom the party and all but guarantee a Democrat will remain in the White House after 2016's election. Do you buy that, Phyllis?
No, I don't buy that at all. I think it is the bill itself that will doom the Republican Party, because there's every indication that the the illegal aliens who are legalized, will vote Democratic. Just remember, they're coming from a country where they have no experience with limited government and balanced budgets and the kind of self-government we have in the United States. There are people who look to the government to take care of them and solve their problems. And there's no way the Republicans can outbid the Democrats in offering these welfare services. And they're all getting some kind of welfare benefits. You know, we have 79 different varieties of welfare benefits, and they all cash in on it, just like the Boston Bombers.
In a recent article, you called this proposal legislative betrayal. What do you mean by that?
Well, most of the candidates for office will tell you, oh, yeah, we're for voter security. We're going to do that first. And now they presented us with a bill that doesn't do that at all. So I think that every line of the bill is a betrayal of what a lot of them have campaigned for. You know, one of those who completely reversed her stand is this Kelly Ayotte, who campaigned for strong border security and no amnesty, and now she's switched. And we don't like that.
Phyllis Schlafly, our guest here today on Crosstalk, as we talk about immigration reform. We'll take a quick 60-second break and pick up our discussion here where we left off. You're listening to Crosstalk on the VCY America Network.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, Noah's Ark researcher at the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, how could Noah care for all the animals on board the ark?
Chris, God would not have instructed Noah and his family to do an impossible task. It would have been difficult, but possible. Once the animals got on board the ark and the flood started, they were confronted with a horrible situation. Animal scholars have noted that almost every modern animal has the ability to go into a semi-dormant state in times of great stress, and I suspect that most did so. Thus, they would have required less food and less cleanup and less exercise. I'm not saying that they fully hibernated all those months of the flood, but that their care was minimal. It would be just like our gracious God to make it possible for Noah and his family to do what he had asked. There's nothing about the flood story that's impossible, and that's the way it is back in Genesis.
For more information, visit our website at icr.org.
You're listening to Crosstalk here on the VCY America Network. Phyllis Schlafly is our guest here today, president of Eagle Forum. Check out their website at eagleforum.org, eagleforum.org. They have a number of articles on this issue. Phyllis, you've got a wealth of information on your website on not only this issue, but a multiplicity of other topics as well.
eagleforum.org.
Mm-hmm. We understand last week that there was a vote that was held in the Senate on what was called a motion to proceed. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's their policy in the Senate, and they need 60 votes for that, and they got them. And I was disappointed that a lot of those who really are against the bill voted to proceed because my analysis of it is there's no way it can be amended to make it a good bill. And Harry Reid is going to limit the number of amendments that they will even consider. I understand the procedure is you have to have a tantrum if you want to get your amendment considered. And but at any rate, I think the best statement was made in a letter written by Senators Chuck Grassley, Jeff Sessions, Mike Lee, and Ted Cruz. And they laid out so many things that are the matter with the bill. It provides immediate legalization without securing the border. It rewards criminal aliens and undermines law enforcement. It has dangerous national security loopholes. It continues and allows the fraud in our legal immigration system. There's no real penalties for illegal immigrants. It rewards them with entitlements. It delays for years the implementation of E-Verify. It does not fix our legal immigration system. And it rewards those who have broken our laws by giving them a special path to citizenship. And, of course, the reason these people came illegally into this country was to get residence in this country, and the bill rewards them with exactly what they came in for illegally.
Well, last Tuesday, President Obama said that America owes it. He said it owes it to certain illegal aliens to pass legislation providing a pathway to citizenship. Tell us your response to that, Phyllis. Do we owe this to illegals?
I don't think Mexico owes us. We owe Mexico to solve their problems. They ought to solve their problems themselves. No, we don't owe it to them. They've violated our laws. The illegally coming into this country was only the start. You know, they call them undocumented, but they're all got pockets full of documents that are fraudulent. And well, I think we have to consider our own citizens. I've done a number of interviews with African-American talk show hosts, and they understand that the blacks are one of the hardest-hit groups by this because they're taking the bill takes away the jobs from the people, the poorer people, and those who do not have a lot of education, those who are not high school graduates. And those people need entry-level jobs. And in addition to that, most of these illegals are below the poverty line, and they are going to get some of these welfare benefits too, because it's you get your welfare benefits based on where you are on the poverty line. And, you know, there are probably a couple of billion people in the world who are poorer than the ones coming in who would like to come to the United States. But we cannot take in the whole world.
You know, we keep hearing numbers such as 12 million illegal immigrants are here in the U.S. Many, including Senator Rand Paul, have stated we aren't going to deport 12 million illegal immigrants. He said if you wish to work, if you wish to live and work in America, then we will find a place for you. What's your response to that, Phyllis? I mean, can we send 12 million illegal people packing their bags?
Well, I don't know anybody who has recommended that. You know, they create a false target and then try to knock it down. Nobody has called for deporting anybody except the criminals. But what we do want to do is have E-Verify. So, you know, you have to present your Social Security number when you apply for a job. So why shouldn't they? And the employer's got a right to check it out and make sure if it's a real Social Security number or if you've dishonestly stolen somebody else's. And so if you can't get a job, maybe they will walk home where they came from.
And that really begs another issue. I think it was Newsmax yesterday had published this story saying that there's concern that the Senate's immigration bill has some, it's going to create a national ID system and another massive database that's going to contain the private information of most Americans. Department of Homeland Security will have a database of driver's licenses in individual states that will be necessary to verify an immigrant's legal status. Are you concerned by a national ID system?
No, I don't. No, I'm not, and I think every state has already got all their driver's licenses that they've issued on a database, and the fact that you have to present it. I mean, I'm presenting my ID all the time. I can't check into a hotel without doing it. I make a purchase. It's all the time. If I have to present it, and then this thing of the police stopping you. I went a little too fast through crossing where it was a yield instead of a real stop, and so the policeman pulls me over, and I have to present my driver's license, and he goes back to his car and he checks back with his home base to find out if it's a real driver's license, and if I have to do that, why don't the illegal aliens have to do it?
Phyllis Schlafly is our guest today. Phyllis, we understand that they're expecting a vote in the Senate prior to their July 4th recess. We understand that the House is also working on their own version. What action are you recommending people take on this?
Well, I'm recommending, first of all, that you call your U.S. senators and tell them to vote no on everything, because very smart people who have read every line of this bill say there is just no way any amendments can make it into a good bill. There are so many things the matter with it. Now the House, they've had a rule in the House that Speaker Boehner would like to avoid, but it is a rule that says that he should not bring anything to the floor unless he has a majority of Republicans supporting it, and it's called the Denny Hastert rule, because he was a former speaker who kind of established that, and it's a good rule because we shouldn't have the leadership bypassing what the majority of their people want. And so I would say that in the House they should not bring anything to the floor unless they have the majority of Republicans for it.
Are you aware of any key differences between the House and the Senate version at this point?
No, I don't think the House has finalized on a version, and of course we don't know what the Senate version is till they deal with the amendments that Harry Reid allows to come to the floor. But I'm very concerned about if the two different bills coming in, and then they go into what's called a conference, and they have a limited number of them to negotiate on that, and this bill is mostly devised and written by liberal New York Senator Schumer. And obviously, Marco Rubio is no match for dealing with Schumer, and I'm not sure any of the Republicans. Schumer is a very aggressive left-winger, and I don't think anything good would come out of a conference.
Phyllis Schlafly, our guest here today, and folks, to contact your senators, you can do so at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. Phyllis, why does this issue matter?
Well, it matters to the Democrats very much because they think they're bringing in millions of new Democratic votes. And they think the Democrats think politics all the time. And there's every evidence that the people coming in will vote Democratic, I think the Democrats who are pushing for this, like Schumer and the other Democrats, really believe that it's permanent control of our country by the left wing if we pass this bill, because it means bringing in so many people who believe in government, like big government, and simply want to continue. And, of course, we know that Obama wants that kind of a government. I'm beginning to think more and more that the real explanation to Obama was in a book by Stanley Kurtz, quite a scholar. I've forgotten the title of the book. But he showed how Obama, when he was at Columbia University, went to a conference of the Socialist Party, and he heard Frances Fox Piven speak. And her theory is that the way for the socialists to take over the United States is to load so many people on the welfare system that you break the system. And I really think that's what he's trying to do. And he's got about 48% of the American people getting some kind of benefit from the government now. And most of these illegal aliens coming in are below a poverty line where they will get some kind of handout, and they'll vote Democratic.
Hey, is that the book of the Radical in Chief?
I think so.
Okay.
I'm getting bad on names.
Okay.
I think so. But anyway, the author is a great scholar, Stanley Kurtz, Kurtz.
Folks, let's open the phone lines today. If you have a question you'd like to ask, a comment you'd like to make on this topic of immigration reform, our number to crosstalk, 800-733-9829, 800-733-9829. And Phyllis, just kind of circle back. I mean, this is where Lindsey Graham is saying, hey, but if the Republicans lead the charge, then he says, then we'll get those votes into our party. And you're saying that's just not the case.
Well, I don't see any evidence. I think it's up to them to provide some evidence that that is true.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't true. And what we know about a lot of these Hispanics who've come in is that they don't assimilate very well, and the second generation becomes more radical than the people who came in. Maybe the guy who had the guts, the strength to swim across the Rio Grande really has a lot of good qualities and get some kind of job, even if it's illegal and low paying, and he develops into a good citizen. But the next generation, they've joined a lot of these gangs, and they have not assimilated. And the real way that millions of people in previous decades assimilated in our country, they arrived at Ellis Island. I've heard a lot of them say it, and they told their children. They say, my father told me we've now landed in America, and we're going to speak English, and we're going to be Americans. And the kids went into the public schools where they spoke only English, and the kids came home and taught English to their parents, and they became good Americans who believe in our country. That's what's happened to the Italians and the Irish and the Jews who came in. They became 100% Americans. And but these people, you really can't show that their next generation, the younger people, are assimilating and becoming Americans.
We're just seconds away from a break. I see the lines are packed, so we'll pick up with calls immediately after the break. But, Phyllis, we're told that these illegals who stay here, who fall under this legislation, they will have to pay back taxes. Do you think this really will happen?
Oh, that's another fraud. The taxes all have to already, as of today, been calculated and billed by the Internal Revenue Service. Now, you know, most of these illegals worked off the books and were paid in cash. So there isn't any paper trail. So they won't be charged any taxes on it.
Wow. Well, we'll come right back to your phone calls after the break. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
The Bible tells us that no man knows the day or the hour of Christ's return, but we are told to be ready, to look for that blessed hope, and to occupy until he comes. The Bible characterizes what the last times would be like, and observing world conditions today, we know the Lord could return at any time. When Jesus' disciples asked, "What will be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world?" Jesus carefully explained what the world would be like. In the book, 40 Irrefutable Signs of the Last Generation, author Noah Hutchings takes a thought-provoking look at these signs of the last generation and the importance of being ready for the Lord's return. This book is the size of a workbook and features over 200 pages presenting 40 irrefutable signs of the last generation. One copy of this book is available for a donation of $20, and 2 copies are available for a donation of $35. To make your donation to VCY America, call 1-800-729-9829. That's 1-800-729-9829.
guest today on Crosstalk, Phyllis Schlafly from Eagle Forum. Again, their website, eagleforum.org, eagleforum.org. You'll find a lot of information on this and many other topics as well. And we're taking your phone calls today. We're talking about this immigration reform, the debates going on in the Senate, the debates going on in the House at this point. And Phyllis has been recommending that you contact your senators and contact your congressmen pertaining to the issue. Again, the main switchboard in Washington in the Senate is 202-224-3121, and the House is 225-3121. Let's begin in Victoria, Texas. Jacob, thank you for calling. You're on the air.
Yes, sir. I wanted to speak about this group, La Raza, because I know a little bit about it. I've been watching this pretty close. They have a saying in Spanish, toda pa la raza y pa los otros nada. And what it means is for the race, everything, and for the others, nothing. And they got other groups, one called La Reconquista and Sin Fronteras, which means no frontier, no borders. Mm-hmm. And these are all connected to the communists. And the Univision report on how the Cubans were behind all this. And if you want to dig deeper, you go to crossroad.to, and it's the UN Global Migration Plan on that crossroad.to website.
Yeah, that's Barrett Chose, a well-known researcher. Mm-hmm.
Right. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, sure, we need more Muslim outreach, and and we need more money from Jay-Z and Beyonce with all their globalist plans. And, it's insane. I don't favor no race. I'm half Mexican, but I don't favor no race at all. I favor who God chose first, the Jews, and then His people, the church, and that we're waiting for a city that's built by God, with God's hands.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate your call.
Well, I'm glad you brought up La Raza, because there's another point about this bill, S744, that we've been discussing, and that is there's some little payouts to some of these community organizing groups like La Raza, so that they can help supposedly assimilate people who are coming in. But they're all people who are really not promoting Americanism in English at all. And we heard a lot of why earmarks are bad, but those are basically earmarks to the wrong people in this bill.
Thank you, Jacob.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Let's go to Gulf Breeze, Florida. Joseph, you're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon. This is all just political theater. The truth is there's been a continuity of agenda for decades now regarding this. It's designed to balkanize our society. And the puppet masters pull the strings. We've got two organized crime syndicates who are just fighting each other for the right to sell us out to the same people who pull their strings. And as far as these people ever assimilating, they're not going to, and there's never going to be any accountability for them. Just today, the Supreme Court said that the state of Arizona, and they're going to go after Alabama and another state, which escapes me now, who are just trying to verify that you've got proof of residency to vote. The absurdity of somebody breaking into your house, then demanding that you feed them, house them, provide them with free schooling and health care, and then they're going to sit there and vote against your interest for their own selfish interest as a result of a government who's purposely attempting to balkanize us and using the Cloward pivot strategy to destroy the nation economically.
Joseph, thanks for bringing that up.
Well, thanks for your comment, and I think a lot of people feel that way because they know there are powerful forces that really don't like America, and they would like to destroy capitalism.
It's kind of a puzzling. I don't know if you've seen that court release vote today from the Supreme Court, Phyllis, about the Arizona law.
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, the Supreme Court ruled today that states cannot on their own require would-be voters to prove they are U.S. citizens before using a federal registration system designed to make signing up easier, reports Fox News. Justices voted 7-2, throwing out Arizona's voter approval requirement that prospective voters document their U.S. citizenship in order to use a registration form produced under the motor voter registration law.
Well, that's outrageous, and because I thought the Constitution gave the right to handle elections to the states, and we're losing control of our whole election process.
Yeah. Let's go to Pensacola next. Ron, you're on the air.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ron.
Oh, yes, thank you. Phyllis, thank you for being on today and telling the people the truth about what's going on. The other two callers previously were right on target. I know here in Florida, I've contacted Rubio's office, and, there are many of us here who were conservative, and maybe Tea Party people are still conservative, who supported him, and I really feel like he's just changed his colors. As far as I'm concerned, he's just another rhino, and I've informed his office. I'll never give another dime to his campaign or anything and support him. I'll never support him in another future election. Of course, the Lord, I believe, is coming first, and you had a commercial supporting a book and things here. They're right on. So thank you very much for everything you're doing there.
All right. Well, thank you. And I think what we face today is another fight in the Republican Party between what's called the establishment and the grassroots. That's what I wrote about in A Choice Not an Echo, my best-selling book in 1964. And we've had this battle every 4 years now. In 1980, we won it when we beat the establishment candidate and nominated and elected Ronald Reagan, the greatest president of the 20th century. But we've got the fight going on now. And I urge people to be active in politics, because if you're not active in the party, and trying to vote for the right person in the primary, then you're not going to have a good guy to vote for in November.
I think you bring up a good point, Phyllis, because many said, I don't worry about the primaries. I just wait for general elections to come about.
Well, then you don't get a good guy on the ballot. And they complain that you have to vote for the lesser of two evils. But if you want to get a good guy on the ballot, you've got to go in the primary and get him on.
Let's go to Boston, Wisconsin. And Mason, you're on the air.
Yes, good afternoon. I got 2 points. When did it become okay for illegals not to pay a price? If I break the law, if it's a traffic violation, I have to pay a fine. If I don't pay a fine, I go to jail. And we got something as important as these people breaking the law, being here illegally. And then my second point is, the southern borders of Mexico, have you heard what the Mexicans do to illegal immigrants that try to enter their country? They're brutal for these people.
It's pretty funny. They don't treat them like we do. No, when people from other Latin American countries try to get into Mexico, they're given the rough treatment. No question about that. But now they claim they want free entry into the United States, an open border up here, because everybody in the world would like to come to America. And, some of these libertarian types have used this expression, let the market decide. Well, the United States is not just a marketplace. We are a free and sovereign country with a country of self-government, and I invite everybody to participate, and you can get some good information on my website, eagleforum.org.
And what about this fine aspect? He said, if I break the law, I got to pay a fine.
I answered that on the previous question. It's a real fraud, because the only fine is if the IRS has already calculated what you owe and has sent you a bill. And most of these illegals were paid in cash, and there's no paper trail. They don't know how much they earned, and nobody else does either.
Thank you for the call here. We appreciate your dialing us to Brad in West Dallas. You're on the air, Brad.
Hi, Jim. Phyllis.
Yeah,
I've got 1 point, 1 question. One is you said you were disappointed in these Rhino Republicans who voted for the motion to proceed on this bill, even though they're against the bill. I reject that. Rhino Republicans voted for the motion to proceed because they are for the bill. It only takes 60 votes to proceed, but maybe only takes 51 to pass the actual bill. So some of them can actually vote to proceed and vote against the bill and go home to say, hey, I voted against the bill, thus covering their posterior. But now my question is, you mentioned that this bill will not fix our immigration system. That fix implies that it's broken, and I reject that. It's good enough for everybody else, other than the Mexican aliens that don't like it. What's broken?
Well, you look at the Boston bombers. That's certainly one aspect. The refugee part is broken, and it's very fraudulent. And so that's one part that's broken. Another part that's broken is the way they let these people in on visas for temporary jobs, and then they would never make them leave when their time is over. And so there are a lot of things that could be fixed if they really wanted to.
Well, I agree with you on those points. Those should be fixed. But when someone like Russ Feingold gets up there and says our immigration system is broken, like he's done over and over, that implies that it's hard on the poor immigrant. and it is not hard on the immigrant. It's like I said, it's good enough for everybody else. And by the way, a lot of these Mexicans are still not going to come out of the shadows. They're not paying taxes now. They're not paying fees now. Why would they sign on to that? They're still going to stay here. They're still going to do what they do, and we're still going to have to deal with them one way or another.
They're still going to take jobs from American citizens, and that's the problem.
Thank you, Brad. Appreciate those points. To Navarre, Florida. Rick, you're on the air.
Yes, wonderful to speak with Mr. Schlafly, and I have a question about the current law, the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act, which supposedly is broken, according to the Gang of Eight. You and others advised President Reagan not to sign that bill in '86 when it was presented to him, but he still did. Why, in your opinion, did he sign this law, the current law, which the Democrats had never enforced and which was as full of loopholes as the current one is? Do you think he was forced into it or politically tricked? And do you think he made a mistake doing it? I'm sure you do. But you probably were a participant in some of these events. I'd like to get your views on that.
Thank you, Rick.
Well, he did make a mistake, and I think he has admitted that he made a mistake. And it was a failure. It was an obvious failure, self-evident failure, which you can see what happened, that none of the promises came true. They legalized so many, two or three times as many people as they said it would legalize, and then it simply brought in an avalanche of new people looking for amnesty. So it was a big failure, and I think he admitted that. And why he was forced into it or persuaded into it, I don't know. I'm not in on that, but Reagan was a wonderful man, but he wasn't perfect, and he did make some mistakes, no question about it. But the lesson for us is we watched it happen, and insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result, because what they're trying to do now is pretty much exactly the same as the mistake Reagan made. And
we thank you for the call. And what we saw is a swelling of a new wave of illegals coming into the nation. And Phyllis, if this amnesty goes forth, won't that just beg for another whole new wave, much bigger than what we have now? That's exactly what we're afraid of. And I think I've heard that there's a wave of them coming right now, trying to make it under the wire in this particular amnesty. Let's go next to Harry in Oregon. You're on the air, Harry.
Oh, hi. Yeah. You took me by surprise. I was listening so closely. Well, I just wanted to say a few things. I don't want to say too much. Stop me if I do. But I'm wondering why no one in Washington or I haven't heard that anyone couldn't propose for the moment a simple moratorium on immigration into the U.S. As bad as our problem is, it just seems to me like to give time to settle everything out, and like Phil says, a lot of it's kind of out of control.
Okay.
Would that be something? Well,
that's a very excellent idea. I have proposed that, but nobody's picked it up. Yes, we ought to have a moratorium on legal immigration until we get our act together and decide what we need to do. Because a lot of the illegal immigration has ended up being very fraudulent. And they're bringing in this chain of relationships, fourth and fifth cousins. And
this is Crosstalk. We'll be right back.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewweekend.com. We're continuing our series today on a biblical worldview in money, 20 points. Today, we're on point 19 and 20. Number 19 is Christian adults are to care for their own parents and grandparents if they are in need. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3 speaks to this. Christian adults are to care for their own parents and grandparents if they're in need. I wonder how many Christians really take this one seriously. I think a lot of our nursing homes wouldn't be full if that were the case. Not that we don't see some places or instances where indeed we have to have our family member in a 24-hour care center. But the church can be such a great witness to the unsaved world and how we care for our parents and our grandparents and respect the dignity of life, even to the very end. Let's have a biblical worldview for money. The last one is number 20. The New Testament church is to care for its own. We see that in 1 Timothy 6, verse 18. The bottom line is people are not to be in need inside the New Testament church.
And breaking news coming out earlier today that the director of the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE, that's the same agency that came under fire for releasing several hundred detainees to less costly forms of supervision ahead of the sequester. Well, Mr. Morton is going to have a new position at a private company, and he is going to stay in that position here until the end of July. And then Mr. Obama will appoint a new leader for ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And Phyllis, I'm sure that's something you're going to be watching, too, as to who is going to be nominated for that position.
Yes, because we know that Obama really believes in violating the law. He's tried to do by executive order things that he cannot do by Congress, such as admitting and legalizing a lot of illegal aliens.
Let's go back to the phone lines here, 800-733-9829. Let's go to Mansfield, Pennsylvania. Ron, you're on the air.
Hey, a great program. I'm a retired federal agent, and I have a master's in history, and my minor was in government. And Phyllis, I had a book I had to read, None Dare Call It Treason. I think you wrote that, and I loved it. And that was a while ago. But the point is, I did a term paper in graduate school, and both President Truman, after World War II, deported 5 million illegal aliens, and Eisenhower deported 7 million. Both of them did it so our returning veterans could have jobs. And everybody seems to forget that.
That's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that out. They just put them on railroad cars and shipped them back down to Mexico. You are right. And if Eisenhower and Truman could do it, it seems to me that Obama could do it, too, if he wanted to. Very good point. Thank you for bringing that out.
Thank you, Ron. Let's go to Bobby calling from Milwaukee. You're on the air, Bobby.
Hello. I'm flabbergasted, and I would really like to hear the justification for beating up 11 to 15 million people who illegally entered the country when we let BP off scot-free for that Deepwater Horizon oil spill. I mean, they literally destroyed the livelihoods of tens of millions of people, and that's it.
Phyllis, how do you respond?
Well, I'm really not up to speed on that. I don't know how to explain that, but one wrong action doesn't justify another. Oh, I do want to say, Jim, the previous caller gave me credit for the book None Dare Call It Treason, which was an enormous bestseller in 1964. I didn't write that book. That was written by John Stormer, whom I know. It had a big effect. In those days, people read books, actually. And we knew and we understood how communism was bad and what we ought to do about it.
Well,
My book was a choice, not an echo.
Okay, this caller here, Bobby, it says, he's just flabbergasted. How can you be picking on 10 to 15 million people, that entered this country illegally?
Well, they broke the law. If you break the law, you're supposed to be picked on by the government and make it right. So I think... And they probably got their job with false documents, and you and I couldn't get by with that, so I don't think the illegals should be able to.
Susan in Milwaukee, you're on the air.
Hi. On Mark Levine's program, it was last week that there's a Tea Party rally, but they have to call it a news conference, next Wednesday from...
Susan, deal with our issue here today.
In total opposition to this bill, of course, Tea Party.
Okay.
Well, good. I hope the Tea Party people are helping us because we need to defeat the bill. It's bad for Americans, and we think jobs should go to American citizens with our present high unemployment.
To Medford, Oregon. Bob, you're on the air.
Yeah, if people would study the history, the American government and the Democratic Party did the same thing during the Civil War with the Irish immigrant. They met him at the dock, promised him a meal, and said if they would sign a piece of paper voting Democratic, they could get citizenship. So I believe this is just a political play for vote.
Well, good point. I didn't know that little historical footnote, but a lot of them were Democrats when they first came in. But then they got Americanized, and they learned, and they turned out to be the Reagan Democrats who voted for Ronald Reagan. after a couple of generations. But I don't see that happening in this case, and we need to protect the integrity and the sovereignty of America.
Thank you, Bob, for your call. Phyllis, how important is the grassroots in issues like this?
Well, just remember, it was in 2007 and 2008 that it was a great powerhouse that supported this same type of amnesty. Ted Kennedy and George Bush and John McCain, they were powerhouses then, and the grassroots rose up and beat them, and the bill never passed. And I think and urge that we can do that again. So I urge all the listeners to this program to call your U.S. senators and tell them that don't let the Senate pass this terrible bill. And then call your members of the House and tell them don't pass any bill at all, and don't let Boehner bring any proposal to the floor unless he has the majority of Republicans with him.
Again, the Senate bill is S-744, S-744, and you can contact your member of the United States Senate at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. The House phone number is area code 202-225-3121. That's 225-3121. And again, Phyllis, if you could share information as far as Eagle Forum is concerned and what you've got to offer there.
Yes, our website is eagleforum.org. A lot of wonderful information. My Phyllis Schlafly report. We have a series of newsletters on this subject. A subscription to this newsletter now in its 46th year is only $20 a year. Best bargain in print, more facts than anything else in writing. And if you haven't got $20, you can get it free on the website, eagleforum.org.
Again, folks, you can check out the website. This is just one of many issues that they are involved in, but eagleforum.org. Phyllis, thank you for being with us here today on the program.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye now. Phyllis Schlafly from Eagle Forum, our guest here today on Crosstalk and dealing with this topic of immigration reform. Again, the number to your U.S. Senator is 202-224-3121. And wanted to pass it on as well as a reminder that tomorrow as well, it expects that as early as tomorrow they could be voting on the bill that would ban abortions at 20 weeks of pregnancy. That is coming up, H.R. 1797. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us on Crosstalk.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.